First and foremost, after praising Allah in the beginning and also hopefully in the end, I thank you, brothers and sisters, for your patience, despite the fact that we were late. And indeed, the slave may intend something, may wish for something, may want something, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees other than that. And we are not people who blame things on the qadr. We are not people who make excuses based off of the qadr. However, once something does happen and take place, then we know for sure it's what? It's qadr. There is no going back with regards to that. That was decreed to happen. As far as one's intention in the future, as far as one's shortcomings and lack of drive, that's different. But once something is written in stone and took place, we say, Qadarullah ma sha fa'al. We intended something, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended something else. And this is spoken about in the Quran al-Kareem in several places. So that's first and foremost. Even though it was the qadr, my personal apologies for us being late. We had intended to come here earlier. We did what we could. Alhamdulillah. Allah is the most great, and He deserves to be praised no matter what takes place. As far as the question is, we know that if a hadith is sahih, it can be used for Islamic jurisprudence. As far as if a hadith is da'if, or if its chain of narration is weak or defective, then that may be another issue. And can we use a weak hadith for fada'il al-a'mal, virtuous deeds? We say that the topic or the question, without any doubt, is a very important question. It's a very plausible, pertinent question, extremely. And it's something that every single Muslim should have some basic knowledge on its answer. Every Muslim should have some basic understanding of this concept. Hadith, hadith sahih, hadith da'if, Islamic fiqh, and virtuous deeds. There's no doubt about that. Because every single Muslim is not going to be a scholar, is not going to be a student of knowledge, but every single Muslim should want to do virtue. Every single Muslim should go after the fada'il al-a'mal. Giving sadaqah, he who feeds an man for 40 days. Every single Muslim should what? Go after these things. So therefore it's a very important question. And the question, like many other things that we say all of the time, is an entire lecture in itself. We say this all the time. It's an entire lecture in itself. But this answer really is an entire lecture in itself. So to keep things brief, to keep things simple, and hopefully to satisfy your appetite, we will mention the answer in the following points. Number one, the sciences of hadith, or the science of hadith, is not a science of arithmetic. It's not a science of mathematics, as many people make it to be and think that it is. The science of considering the hadith to be sahih, authentic, da'if, inauthentic, is not 1 + 1 = 2. That's wrong. And this has become very widespread. If these conditions are fulfilled, then it's automatically sahih. If these conditions are not fulfilled, then it's automatically da'if. No, that's wrong. That's partially true, and especially for the beginner. But as you go on in your studies and you become more advanced, it's a whole different world of the chain of narration and the actual text of the hadith. Everybody understand this? So therefore, hypothetically, there are 4 conditions for a hadith to be sahih. The first is that every link in the chain, every man or woman, it is a must that they took the narration from the former and the latter. In other words, A, B, C, D, and E, all of those letters, one way or another, must have had some type of contact or correspondence. Pay close attention to my words. I said contact or correspondence. There's a difference. I maybe didn't meet you physically, but you took my words through an authentic means, a letter, a phone, a text message. For sure, this was what Mufti said to me, but I didn't meet him. Everybody understand this? There's a difference. Physical contact, or at least correspondence. The second condition, in brief, is that the reporters in the chain of narration must be Muslims. They must be of age. They must be sane. And they must be good practicing Muslims. They cannot be sinful, evil-doing Muslims. Number 3, the narrators or the reporters, they must be people who have retentive memories. People that pay attention thoroughly, correctly. They understood what was said to them, and they passed it on as they heard it. And last but not least, the report cannot go against a more authentic report. In other words, you can see here that these 4 conditions are based off of common sense and logic. Common sense and what? And logic. Somebody comes into the masjid and he said what? I saw, or he said there was an elephant on Foch Boulevard. There was an elephant on Foch Boulevard. And what's that, Guy Brewer? There was an elephant, or a series of elephants, a stampede of elephants. The first thing you would ask yourself is what? What would you say to yourself? You're going to ask him what?
Did you see it?
There you go. Did you, what happened? You're going to see if he actually saw it him or herself. And that is the first condition. In other words, he took the report from something that he saw or heard or felt or taste, something that's tangible. Number two is if somebody came into the masjid who was a known liar or drunkard or this type of sinner or this type of womanizer, you automatically going to have what about what he says? You're going to have doubts. Even though it could have been an elephant stampede. We were driving here, what do we see? We saw the soccer ball with Rasta dreads. It was a big Christmas float. It was a Christmas float. Yeah, it was. It was the first Christmas float was a soccer ball with the Guyanese flag. It was a big Christmas thing, and the next float was the Jamaican flag with dreads hanging down from a huge soccer ball. Wallahi al-Azim. Am I making this up? Nafis Abu Hanif? This is reality. So it's weird, but you're going to look in the integrity of the person. That's firstly. Secondly, you're going to say, were you asleep? Were you dreaming when you saw that? Or did it actually really happen? Someone who's always known to forget. Imran always leaves his cell phone on the desk. Every class. Mufti got my phone. Mufti got my phone. His memory is, when it comes to that, is not that sharp. And then last but not least, you're going to look at the content of what he said. What is the probability of an elephant stampede being right there outside? What's the probability of that? It could have happened. Maybe it was a circus traveling. It got into a car accident and the elephants ran loose. It's possible, but it's unlikely. It's what? It's unlikely. It's not practical. It doesn't happen on a daily basis. So these are the main principles for critiquing a narration. And they are applicable in life today. You watch something on the news. Was there a witness? What is the integrity of the witness? And then there's cross-examination to find loopholes and flaws in his testimony. You either made a mistake or you're lying. And that's why they put you under oath. Everybody understand this? And most importantly, we have a better witness. So we have 5 witnesses. We have someone who's directly related to the victim or directly related to the suspect that said totally different than what you said. In other words, the report goes against what? What is more authentic. So these are the basic conditions of a hadith being classified as sahih. Any hadith that does not fulfill these conditions is generally classified as da'if, weak. Everybody understand this? Just because a hadith has a weak chain of narration does not mean that it's weak. Just because a hadith has an authentic chain of narration, outwardly authentic, it doesn't mean that it's sahih. Everybody understand this? We have the ladder and we have the roof. You have to climb the ladder to get to the roof. Once you're on the ladder to get down, you come back from the roof to the ladder. Everybody understand this? Just because it's a strong ladder, don't mean it's a strong roof. You may ascend the ladder and fall through the roof. Is this not the case? It may be a weak, flimsy ladder, but you get up quick enough, then you're stable on the roof. Everybody understand this? It's not a requirement. So therefore, that's the first point. The next point is that a hadith that is weak, it depends on what type of weakness it is. There are levels of weakness. There is something that is slightly weak. There's something which is severely weak. And there's that which is fabricated and spurious. It's a lie against the Prophet ﷺ. That which is extremely weak, we have no usage for. That which is fabricated, we have no usage for. Fiqh, tafsir, virtuous deeds, we don't even deal with those. The type of hadith that could possibly be used in fiqh, in tafsir, virtuous deeds is a hadith that has slight weakness. It has what? Slight weakness. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that a weak hadith khayrun min ra'i rijal. He says a weak narration is better than the opinion of men. It's better than the opinion of men. And the ulama, they have 2 different interpretations on what Imam Ahmad said and what he meant. Did he mean a hadith that's actually weak? Or did he mean a hadith that was in the middle between weak and authentic? Yani Hasan. Okay, everybody understands? What's important is that the hadith being da'if, being totally thrown out, rejected, don't use it, that is not the concept of the people of the past. That is a new modern day concept on a major scale. And when we say following the pious predecessors, it is a critical mistake to just make it specific to Aqidah. No, we have to follow the pious predecessors in their understanding of the Quran, their understanding of the Sunnah, their application of fiqh, and everything else. Most people today, they only say what? Fahm as-salaf, and they mean what? That's it. That's wrong. We understand the earliest generations of Muslims, and they're dealing with the hadiths as well. So therefore, there are two traditional schools with regards to using a da'if hadith for virtuous deeds. And what we mean by virtuous deeds or fadail al-amal is a hadith that says, he who gives sadaqah will have this. He who reads the Quran will have that reward. He who feeds an imam for 40 days will be given this food in paradise. For example, virtuous deeds. Everybody clear on this? Fadail al-amal. Everybody clear on this? The virtue of making tasbih, saying subhanallah. Tahleel, saying la ilaha illallah. Takbir. Everybody understand this? The virtue of da'wah. We have certain books, fadail al-amal, virtuous deeds. So therefore, there are two traditional schools. The first traditional school states that if a hadith is da'if, slightly weak, extremely weak, fabricated, they say there's no need for it. And there are more than enough authentic narrations to encourage us to do good deeds. And there are other ulama who hold the view that a da'if hadith can be mentioned, and there's a difference between mentioned and used. And many people, they mix between the two. Mentioning something and using something, it's like night and day. Everybody understand this? I can mention in my lecture, it states in a hadith, it states in a tradition, the Prophet is quoted to have said. I never said it was sahih. I never said it was true or false. I never said act upon it, but I'm giving you a piece of information. So some of the ulama, they say that you can mention a weak hadith or even use it for virtuous deeds with the following conditions. Number one, it cannot be extremely weak. Number two, they say it must have a general sound meaning that goes with the other texts from Kitab and authentic Sunnah. And number three, a person is not to believe that the Prophet ﷺ said it decisively. He's not to what? He's not to believe that the Prophet ﷺ said it. And some ulama, they say that these conditions are very difficult to implement and they're almost impossible. When an imam gives a khutbah, he says it states in a hadith. That's not what the average Muslim is going to take from the khutbah. He's going to go home, he's going to leave the masjid, he's going to say the Prophet said. The imam says in the khutbah the hadith is extremely weak. The layman Muslim is going to leave the khutbah and he's going to say in the authentic hadith. Most Muslims, their attention span, their level of knowledge, they're not going to make a difference between this and between that. So some of those ulama, they say that it shouldn't even be what? Shouldn't even be mentioned. However, when we look at the classical books of hadith, whether it's the Muwatta of Malik, whether it's the Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and the other major classical mainstream books in the genres of the books of hadith, weak narrations were mentioned therein. And the masters of hadith, such as Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, Shu'bah ibn Hajjaj, Imam Ahmad, Imam Yahya ibn Ma'in, Ali ibn al-Madini. We didn't even get into Bukhari and Muslim, because that's another mistake. That's another misconception when people, and there's no disrespect to Bukhari or Muslim, but they make hadith science exclusive to Bukhari and Muslim. And what Imam Bukhari said dominates what, no, that's wrong. Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, they were students of the people that I just mentioned. They say that was my young buck. He was going to the store for me when I was doing this and I was doing that. They said, you were on your big wheel. You were rolling around in the living room playing with a ball when I was running the streets. Everybody understand this? So it's wrong to attribute that to him and forget the one what? That was going crazy when he was still in the living room. Everybody understand the concept here? Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah was a pupil of those ulama. So we go back to the original foundation, the grandfathers, the forefathers. Everybody clear on this? That's a whole topic in itself. But I hope you can understand the concept that I'm trying to get to. These ulama here, Ahmad, and even before Ahmad, Shu'bah ibn Hajjaj, Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, these ulama who died very long time ago. They came years before Bukhari Muslim even thought of. Everybody understand this? Whether Imam Muslim was a pupil of Bukhari. And some of the ulama said that if it wasn't for Bukhari, Imam Muslim would have been unknown. The point that we're trying to get to is, these ulama, many of them said, whenever we spoke on halal and haram, shaddadna, we were strict and severe. وَإِذَا رُوِّينَا فِي فَضَائِلِ الْأَعْمَالِ أَوْ فِي الزُّهْدِ تَسَاهَلْنَا. They said when we spoke about the hereafter, when we spoke about zuhd, divorcing the worldly life and things like this, then we were a little lenient. In other words, When it comes to virtuous deeds, many of the ulama of the past, they weren't as harsh. But when it came to speaking about rulings, laws, injunctions, they were a little what? They were a little what? No, they were strict, they were harsh when it came to fiqh. So therefore, me personally, I feel that if they're tulab al-ilm, or Muslims that are aware and they can discern, and you say it's a da'if hadith that states this. The hadith is not the most authentic, but it states that. This hadith is not that bad, and as long as, most importantly, it doesn't have a foul meaning. It's not munkar. It's not a meaning that goes against narrations which are more authentic. I'll leave with this example because I know you're going to get to it then. Just one example. The Prophet ﷺ, as Jabir ibn Abdullah narrated, that on the day of the battle of the conquest of Mecca, when Mecca was it was over, the father of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu came. He was a mushrik at the time. He accepted Islam. The Messenger of Allah, he saw that his head and his face was white. The narration says, كَالثَّغَامَةِ بَيَاضًا. It was like a hyssop plant. He was an old man. He said, غَيْرُ هَذَا وَجَنِّبُوهُ السَّوَادَ. He says, dye this man's hair, but don't dye it black. Dye his hair, but do not dye it black. This hadith is collected in the Sahih. There's another hadith narrated by Abdullah ibn Abbas, in which the Messenger of Allah said, في آخر الزمان, he says that towards the end of time, there are going to be people who dye their heads, who dye their beards black. He says, كَحَوَاسِلَ الْحَمَامِ لَا يُرِيحُونَ رَائِحَةَ الْجَنَّةِ. He says they would dye their faces and their heads the colors of the chest of pigeons and doves, and they would not enter paradise. In other words, they would use black hair dye. And there are many, many other hadith that speak about dyeing your hair black. So we have another hadith that states that the Prophet is quoted to have said that the best color to dye your hair is black. The hadith states that it causes more fear in the hearts of your enemies, and it allows your women to be more attracted to you. Now, one may say the hadith is a little da'if, so on and so forth. What's the big problem? We can use it. Not only is its chain problematic, but the text of the hadith goes against what? Other hadith that are authentic, that are more. So it's a problem. The meaning is now rejected. It's now what? Harun is munkar. It's rejected. Everybody understand this? And every single da'if hadith doesn't mean that it has a rejected meaning. And there are some da'if hadiths which have a what? A rejected meaning. Everybody clear on this? This is in brief. Ikhtisar shadid. Very, 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 very what? Brief. Well, hopefully that's the answer to your question.
Yeah,
and hopefully that's clear, inshallah. That's very brief, as I said.